Hello, everyone. Welcome to Governor Wolf's second Facebook Town Hall. We thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Thank you, Governor, for being here.
Thank you, Megan. It's good
Again.
to be back. Good to be back. Good to be back.
In the midst of budget season.
Yes.
Yesterday was June 1st. And just tell us real quick, why are you sitting down with us tonight to answer these questions?
Because this is important. Actually, you're right. I mean, June is the month when you really get into high gear on the budget. And yesterday, the dance started, and I think we're all going to work really hard to get to an on-time budget. But again, my focus is on making sure that we end up with a budget that does what I think it ought to do for Pennsylvania. I don't just want a budget on time. I want one that actually moves Pennsylvania forward, makes us better. That's why I was elected. That's why I ran. And I think that's what most of the people here want.
All right. Got a lot of feedback after the first town hall we did. People really seem to like it, so we're here doing it again. Just a couple of reminders. We took questions over Facebook, the governor's Facebook page, over the last day or so. We're going to be reading a lot of those questions today, as many as we can get to, and we encourage you to continue submitting questions, and we'll get to as many of those as we can as well.
I'll try to keep my answers as short as possible so we can get to as many as possible.
All right. All right, well, the first comes from Heidi in Erie. She says, "Hello, Governor. As the spouse of an ALS Lou Gehrig's disease patient, I'm also very interested in the legalization of medical marijuana in PA, and I'd like to know, in your opinion, what can we expect on that front in the near future?"
Well, as you know, Megan, the medical marijuana bill recently passed the Senate, and it had the support of a broad array of conservative and liberal senators who want to do what I want to do, which is to allow doctors to prescribe the treatment they think is appropriate for the patient's need. So it went through the Senate. It's now in the House. I hosted a panel discussion on legalizing medical marijuana with both Senator Fulmer and Senator Leach there. And I think we had a good conversation that we brought medical professionals, doctors, into the conversation, but also people who are suffering from diseases that could be treated by medical marijuana if the doctors had the right to prescribe that in Pennsylvania. So I think there's a lot of support for it. I think people are moving. I support the bill. It has come through the Senate, and I think we'll now see what happens in the House.
Okay. All right, let's talk about pre-K. It's a big topic right now. Pennsylvania Partnerships for Children. Only 1 in 6 of PA's 3 and 4-year-olds have access to publicly funded high-quality pre-K, despite its proven benefits to students and communities. Why aren't we investing more in a program we know has a significant return on investment?
Yeah, we should invest more. My budget proposes that we spend more. I just was over at the Camp Hill State Correctional Institution, the prison, with a group of Republican district attorneys, and all of us were in strong agreement that this is an investment we need to make. And the backdrop of the prison was just to make the point that if we don't invest relatively smaller amounts in early childhood education, we're going to be investing a lot more in the long run. So it's a smart investment. It's why businesses, it has brought together law enforcement officers, it has brought together conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats. I think this is something whose time has come. My budget proposes that we do more in early childhood education. I think there's broad support for it.
And we'll move on to basic education funding, another big priority. Charlene from Cresco says, in your budget, some areas are getting so much help with their education spending, and then some areas are getting so little. How did you come up with those numbers, and why isn't the goal all school districts paying the same amount per student?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think we're trying to be fair. And I know fair is in the eye of the beholder, but in fairness in terms of funding for education, I've gone back to an earlier fair funding formula. There's a fair funding formula commission right now that should present its findings sometime in June. But all of us are trying to do the same thing. What is fair? And it turns out that the challenges might be greater in one school district than in another, and so having just a level per pupil spending or allocation might not be adequate. If you have a lot of teachers of English as a second language in one school district and none in another, that's a school district with a lot of English language learners will need maybe more per pupil than the one that doesn't. So we need to be sensitive to that. The fair funding formulas that other states, I think we're one of 3 states without a fair funding formula, that other states have used address those issues. I think the fair funding formula bipartisan commission that's going to report in a few weeks we'll also look at that and we'll address, I think, the issue that we're talking about here, and that is come up with something that says, what is it that's going to give your child in that school district a really good educational outcome? Let's make sure we invest that.
And testing. Dawn would like to know, will you support getting rid of the Keystone exam, which high school graduates need to now graduate, requirement?
Well, we're looking a couple things. First of all, we're looking right now to be more flexible on the Keystone exams because people are right now coming up against the deadline. So I know the Department of Education and the legislature, both parties, people are looking at how we can be flexible at this point. We need an accountability system, no question about it, and a test of some sort is probably part of that. But I want to figure out, and I think the Department of Education and teachers want to understand how we can get a better measurement of how we're doing in terms of teaching for life. What happens to our children when they leave our school system? Do they have good career options? Do they go to a university and do well? Those are the kinds of things I think we need to know. Are parents satisfied with the education their children are getting? Those are the kinds of things I think are employers seeing good results when they hire people coming out of the Pennsylvania school systems. Those are the kinds of accountability metrics that I'm trying to focus on and I think take us away from the single-minded focus on the tests like the Keystone test.
Let's move on to Medicaid. Bob from Mertztown would like to say, please bring us up to date on Medicaid expansion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Medicaid expansion is in full force. I came into office and immediately started to implement the expansion of Medicaid according to the terms of the Affordable Care Act. We've made some good progress. The goal is to make sure that no one who has signed up for any program is left behind, and that we end up with 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 additional Pennsylvanians getting access to health care that they didn't have before. We should have the full expansion complete by early fall of this year.
Okay. Todd from Pittston says, everyone talks about helping the middle class. Are you here to also help the low income and the disabled?
Yeah, that's a great question. We need to make sure, and I keep talking about a level playing field. Pennsylvania, all of us as Pennsylvanians are going to be in a better place. We're going to have a stronger economy, stronger communities, if everybody has a shot at a good life. I think the goal for all of us is to have a great private sector job, a family sustaining job, and if we accomplish that, that would be a great social policy. So how do we do this in a population that is diverse, that comes from different backgrounds, at different starting points? I think that's one of the things that is really important to me, that we create this level playing field, regardless of what your disability is, regardless of where you start or your parents start life in terms of the income scale, that you have an opportunity to make a real contribution to the welfare and benefit and the economy that all of us work in.
All right. I'm going to read this one in full. Cindy from Bethlehem says, Governor Wolf, I am 65 and patiently awaiting the tax relief that you outlined for seniors in PA. When do you think any kind of budget will get passed? If something isn't done with the taxes, will we have to move to a state that does take care of its seniors? With taxes going up as I'm typing this question, it is impossible for seniors on a limited budget to stay in PA. It amazes me that the school districts are still going to raise taxes this year. We need your help, please.
Yes, I understand the sensitivity to this. This is really an important issue. I ran on this, and frankly, here in Harrisburg, there are a lot of people in both parties, in the House and the Senate, who care about this issue. We really need to do something about our property taxes. We need to produce some relief. I think we should all be heartened. I mean, you're asking me to predict. I don't know where it's going to end up. I know what I'm proposing. I'm proposing something that will actually give you real relief for the first time in my lifetime. And I'm also heartened by the fact that in the House, Republican-controlled House, just a few weeks ago, a bill passed also with substantive property tax relief. Now, that bill and my bill are different in terms of how the relief is applied. And we have a lot of conversation, discussions to ensue, but we're all on the same page in thinking that this is important. So I'm I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to get to the point where you don't have to think about leaving Pennsylvania.
All right, and a follow-up. Gloria says, many of us worked for you and voted for you based on your promise to restore state funding for public schools. What options will you have if the GOP-controlled assembly refuses to pass a budget that increases education funding?
Yeah, that's a good question. We really need to increase our investment in education, and I think I'm assuming that everybody who ran for public office last year heard the same thing I did, and that is this is an investment we need to make. It's in our enlightened, but in our self-interest to have good schools. And we can't have good schools. You can't just throw money at any problem, but you can have good schools if you keep taking money away from them. My proposal is to raise the state share of funding for public education from where it is now in the 30% range, 35% I think, to 50%. And to increase education funding to restore the cuts that the last administration made. And I want to do that as quickly as I possibly can. We need to make sure that every child in our schools today has a good education so they have a good future.
Mm-hmm. All right, Nicholas asks, what are you going to do to grow jobs and spur growth in economically distressed parts of Pennsylvania?
Well, all Pennsylvania needs to benefit from a good economic development program. And I think there are a couple things we can do broadly to show that Pennsylvania is a place to do business. I built a business here actually twice. We have a great workforce, we have a great location, we have so many natural attributes that we can brag about. I want to build on those things. So I want to reduce the corporate net income tax by 50%. I want to eliminate the capital stock and franchise tax, things that I think will make a case to the business world wherever they are, to entrepreneurs in Pennsylvania and outside of Pennsylvania, that we are open for business. I also, of course, want to make sure that everybody pays their taxes, so I want to have combined reporting so that we eliminate the Delaware loophole. I also want to increase the investment in education to make sure that we're investing in community colleges, trade schools, places that actually provide the skills that our industry needs to develop. And I also want to do economic development projects in places that we should target for economic development where it's not taking place right now. There are a lot of opportunities. I am bullish on Pennsylvania, and I think with a few, I think intelligent investments, we can make Pennsylvania a real economic dynamo.
Cool. All right, well, Sean from Shavertown follows up and says, as a recent graduate with a degree in political science, what does a proposed budget in your mind allow for in terms of greater Commonwealth employment? Furthermore, on the whole, I'm going to stop there. Commonwealth employment. We cut Sean off.
Okay, so first of all, let me compliment you on your political science degree. That's what I have.
Nice.
I think as I said in answer to the last question, what we need is and what I want is to make Pennsylvania a magnet for entrepreneurs who are going to create jobs in Pennsylvania. I want to make Pennsylvania the kind of place that someone who wants to pursue a career or create jobs stays in Pennsylvania. That this is a land of opportunity. And I think you do that with a couple things. Investing in education is one, making sure our institutions of higher education, K through 12, early childhood, do everything they can do to prepare people for the jobs that are out there and that could be out there. But also create a climate by reducing the corporate net income tax by 50, not 15, but 50%. Eliminating the capital stock and franchise tax, making this a place that is definitely open for business. And so we are creating right here in Pennsylvania the kinds of jobs that good political science graduates can get.
Nice. All right, let's move on to transportation infrastructure. John from North Wales asks, will your budget have increased funding for infrastructure repairs?
Yeah, actually, and as much as I'd like to take full credit for this, I think I have to give credit to the legislature and even the governor from the prior governor for passing and enacting Act 89. Pennsylvania should have an additional $1 billion this year to address the issues of bridges that are substandard, potholes in the roads, even some new roads. So infrastructure is really important in any economy. It's really important in a keystone state. Transportation is very important. I think we have over 40,000 miles of state roads, state highways in Pennsylvania that we have to maintain and upgrade. And so transportation is important. We have the funding. I want to continue to invest in transportation. And with the new Secretary of Transportation, Leslie Richards, she and I both have a real focus on making sure that we do a good job here.
Okay. Here's one we've heard about in the news a lot lately, severance tax. CJ would like to say, hello, Mr. Governor. Can you address the worry of energy companies and Republicans about the severance tax on the gas industry? There are claims about millions of dollars in investment lost, as well as lost jobs. Can you please explain to them where these tax dollars will go to, and if you have one, the plan to not let the job and investment loss happen, at least to their predictions?
Yeah, that's a great question, and as someone who built a business, again, twice, I am the last person who wants to drive any business away from Pennsylvania, especially the gas industry. This is, I think if we do this right, from an environmental point of view and an economic and jobs point of view, this could be a game changer for Pennsylvania. My severance tax is designed to be a modest tax. It's in the middle of the pack. It's not the highest by any stretch of the imagination. It's not the lowest, but it's meant to be competitive with other states. And it's meant to be there so we can actually fund some of the public goods the gas industry actually needs. The gas industry needs people who have the skills to work in the gas fields. We need ways and funds to educate our citizens, to give them those skills. I think we also need to make the case to places that don't necessarily have the gas but could be home to pipelines, that they have a stake, a vested interest in making this industry successful as well. So I think what I'm proposing will not only not cost jobs, but actually should lead to making the industry even stronger in Pennsylvania and connecting Pennsylvanians to this industry in a way that it's not connected right now.
Okay, I'm going to read this one in full too. It's regarding pensions. Thomas from Central City says, what is your plan to fix the pension system? Do you plan to keep it as is? As a teacher, I have concerns with the Republicans' proposal. I make significantly less money than others with my level of education and have a second job to make ends meet. I am willing to sacrifice some now, knowing that one day I will be able to retire with a decent pension.
Yeah, I think retirement security is really important. It's important to me, and it's important to all Pennsylvanians if we want to attract good people to public service, including to our schools. We also have to be concerned about the burden that we impose on the taxpayer, because one of the reasons we have a pension issue right now is because the employer, the state, has not been paying into the plan as much as it should have, while the employees were very faithfully contributing money to their own plans. So we need to come up with a solution that recognizes that we need to be fair to the employees. We also need to be fair to the taxpayer and find a way to address the pension unfunded liability in a way that's okay with the taxpayer. My proposal saves us $10 billion over a period of time, $1.5 billion over the next 5 years, and allows us to continue a pension plan that actually has been in place since, I guess, 2010. I look forward to, I'm sure we'll have robust discussions, because as you pointed out, the Senate has actually come up with their own plan, and we'll have to work out those differences. But I think we've got to have retirement security. We've got to make sure that Pennsylvania has public sector employees who really want to work here and who get compensated for the work that they do for us.
Michael from Bellefonte says, Governor Wolf, PA used to be one of the best states for attracting outside investors for solar energy projects. Do you think under your leadership we will once again be one of the best states for solar?
Yeah, I think all alternative energy sources, wind, solar, we were a leader, and I think we can be that again. Pennsylvania is in a good place to take advantage of the new technologies that are out there. In my budget, I'm proposing a $675 billion bill for economic development. A big chunk of that, I think almost $200 million, is for programs to sustain, support encourage alternative energy sources. I have a very conservative Republican uncle who put solar panels on his roof because there was a federal and I think a state tax credit back in the Rendell years. And that tax credit was there to make up the difference between what was economically viable, I mean the return he would ordinarily get without that tax, and the cost of doing traditional energy. We need to do continue those tax credits, although the gap between what's economical and the current pricing has narrowed over the last 4 or 5 years. I still think we need some help there. I think we have a very bright future. We can create good jobs, a really strong economy with alternative energy, and we can have a clean source of energy. So I'm bullish on that. I'm big on that, and my budget proposals actually take us forward.
Okay. On to Pennsylvania liquor. Brian asks, what is the outlook to modernize the LCB?
I think we need to modernize the Liquor Control Board. I think we need to improve the customer experience, and there's some things we can do immediately. We can have more Sunday sales. We can make better prices. We can have a better selection, a broader selection. We're the biggest purchaser of distilled spirits, or one of the biggest in the world. Pennsylvania is. I think we ought to allow direct shipments or encourage direct shipments from wineries around the country into Pennsylvania. I think the things we can do to make that customer experience better, and those are the things that I see that should be encompassed in any modernization scheme.
All right, let's take this question from Francois in Pittsburgh. He says, Mr. Wolf, thank you for listening to people through the Facebook town hall meeting. I would like to know how you address the fracking issue in your budget.
Thank you very much, Francois. That's a great question. This is something that I believe we ought to do correctly, but we ought to do it. I think we should encourage the growth of a gas industry that could be a real game changer for our economy. We simply cannot do this at the expense of our environment. We've got to have both. Good jobs, a strong economy, a strong environment. And so what I'm proposing to do is encourage the industry to develop responsibly. I'm proposing a severance tax that would bring hundreds of millions of dollars into the state, that would address the needs of local areas that now get benefit from the impact fee, would have about $10 million that would add people to oversee the industry at the Department of Environmental Protection. And by the way, not only oversee the industry, but enforce the regulations in a more timely manner so that permits and things like that can get done quicker. I want to put some of that money into building a bridge to a sustainable energy future, to economic development. That was the $675 million bond issue I was talking about. But most of it, hundreds of millions of dollars, the remainder of the severance tax proceeds would go to support education.
All right. Josh from Tamaqua asks, do you believe PA is close to a non-discrimination bill for the LGBT community? Also, happy LGBT Pride Month.
Thank you very much. I think Judge Jones, the federal district judge from the Middle District, in May of last year, struck down Pennsylvania's prohibition against gay marriage. And so gay marriage is now legal in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, we don't have a non-discrimination bill. I support strongly the efforts of people like Representative Sims and others to bring Pennsylvania into the 21st century with a good, strong non-discrimination bill. I think, I believe that would be a good thing for all of us. This is Pennsylvania. We were founded by William Penn on the basis of welcoming everybody. That would be great for our economy, and I think non-discrimination is something that could be good for all of us.
All right. And Terry from Carlisle, she asks about prison reform. She says that she believes too many people are incarcerated for non-violent drug crimes that should get some sort of exception to the rule, and it would sure help prison overcrowding.
Yeah, we do have a strong prison pipeline that forces us to spend too much money on incarcerating too many people. That's a problem in many states. I think Pennsylvania is is one of the states that has a problem with that. We need to invest more in education. I think we need to stop putting so many people in prison for especially nonviolent crimes. We break up too many families. We destroy too many lives. We take too many people out of reasonable employment. My company, I used to give a second chance, and I had a lot of good employees who made a mistake early stage of their life, committed a nonviolent crime. Later on, giving them a second chance. They turned out to be really good employees. I think we can do a better job of investing in early childhood education and education so that people don't make those stupid mistakes as frequently. I think we can do a better job of saying, there is a difference between a violent and a nonviolent crime, and we should recognize petty crimes for what they are, and not sock someone with a permanent record that is going to be a disgrace for the rest of his or her life. And I think that way we can actually reduce the expenditures we're making at the state, a big part of which has to do with our corrections
You put the
institutions.
investment in on the back front end instead of the back end, right?
That's right. Well, investment in education, but again, also I think decriminalization of a number of crimes, turning them into misdemeanors that are now crimes would actually have I think a salutary effect in terms of the employability of people and keeping them from going to prison in the first place.
And we just got this one in from Marcella in Harrisburg. This goes back to education. So she says, what accountability measures do you have in place for the money going to school districts?
That's a really great question. We need accountability because we've got to make sure that the investment taxpayers are making well over $20 billion in our schools, that the taxpayer feels comfortable that investment makes sense. I don't know anybody who thinks real investment in education is not the right thing to do. I think everybody believes that's a smart thing to do. But they want to make sure, and I think this is reasonable, to make sure that investment is done wisely. So the accountability, I think we need, and I talked about that earlier. I want to get away from an accountability that's just focused on one thing, like a high-stakes test. Testing obviously has importance. We have to know whether you're learning fractions in the 5th grade or 4th grade or whenever they learn fractions these days. But we also want to know whether schools are preparing our graduates for life in the workplace, for life and family, those kinds of things. So we need an accountability system to show all of us who are taxpayers that what goes on inside the schools is really as good as I think it is.
All right. Robbie asks, are you going to raise the minimum wage and to how much?
Well, I would like to, in my budget proposal, I propose raising the minimum wage to $10.10. I think it's at $7.25 an hour right now. That would take us up to just around $21,000, $22,000 a year. And for a family of 4, that's just around the poverty limit. Where we are at $7.25 is actually in the poverty level. And if you're a family of 4, that's, I think, just wrong. We should not have a system anywhere where a family, somebody working in a full-time job with a family of 4 is in poverty. We just can't have that. When I went back to my business, it was flat on its back. I actually raised the compensation, the wages of my hourly workers by a lot. And I did it not because I was trying to make some theoretical point, but because I knew it would turn my workers into even better workers. They're already very good, but it connected us with the company. They were more productive. And I think that same thing is true in the economy. If we raise the minimum wage by this modest amount that I'm talking about, it'll make a real difference in the lives of people who are making $7.25 an hour, and I think it'll make a real difference in the economy of Pennsylvania.
Charlie from Pittsburgh says, why don't you support Senate Bill 76 to eliminate the school property tax?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, and we've had a lot of, obviously, conversation about that here in Harrisburg. I think that the really interesting thing about House Bill 7 and Senate Bill 76 is that by moving the property tax to zero, you create sort of an implicit guarantee that you're not going to have an increase in property taxes. I mean, it's there. I, however, think that there ought to be some local contribution to education. And so I want to go to state funding at 50%, not 100%. which is a big drop in the property tax for the according to my distribution, or even the Republican distribution. I think we all are sensitive to the issue of making sure that this does not end up coming back as a tax increase for the school district 3, 4, 5 years down the road. This has to be for dollar tax relief. And I think House Bill 76 was very clear on that and appealed to a lot of people because of that. I think we can do that, make sure that this is real tax relief, but also make sure that there is local input into the school system, which is what my my proposal would accomplish, so we can have both of those things.
All right. And let's see here. Last question is from Brian in, if I butcher this, I apologize, Wummelsdorf?
Sounds good to me.
I know you're busy, he says, but when you get a chance, can you legalize marijuana, please? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. I have proposed and support the legalization of medical marijuana. I support the decriminalization of recreational marijuana. I think we ought to look and see, I think Justice Brandeis talked about states as being the laboratories of democracy. We have a chance to see how legalization is working. 2 states are working through that right now, Colorado and Washington. And I think Pennsylvania would be wise to sit back and see how that goes in those 2 states.
Okay. All right, and I guess that's going to wrap up our Facebook town hall. I guess I just want to give you a chance to kind of tell our viewers on Facebook, what you expect to see over the next several weeks here as we head into budget negotiations.
Well, I think that we expect to see a lot of fun and dramatics. We are coming to this. I'm coming to this budget with a different intent than I think people have had over the last 4 or 5 years. The status quo is no longer acceptable. I think I was elected because voters of Pennsylvania said, we don't want to do what we were doing before. We need to move Pennsylvania forward. We need a budget that isn't smoke and mirrors. We need something that's not just the status quo. We need something where we're addressing the issue of underfunding of schools. We need to address the issue of the structural budget deficit. We need to have a severance tax. We need to have a fair way to raise taxes, and we need property tax relief. So all those things together, my budget is trying to move those things forward. And I think whenever you're bringing the idea of real innovation to the fore, I think we can have a better state as a result of this. I think you're going to get some good conversations. So I'm looking forward to maybe a few fireworks, but mostly good conversations, vigorous conversations over the next 30 days. And I hope we bring, I know we will bring a budget that actually has substance to it and will do something really good for Pennsylvania.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to answer these questions. I know our viewers do on Facebook as well, so all I can say is keep interacting, because we like to read what you have to say.
No, this is great, and thank you all for participating. I appreciate your interest in what goes on here in Harrisburg.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor.
Thanks a lot.